a lot of issues on this environment, the idea of climate change, the idea of what our influence is, what's our role. What are your thoughts on that and stewardship, and I know some of the guys we've talked about. How does Genesis play into that?
Well, I think what happens is that, again, when you wipe out the notion of a creator, and you wipe out the understanding of our relationship to the universe around us, to the earth, and our responsibility to tend it, to steward it properly, then all of a sudden humanity, the human race, gets leveled with everything else, and everything becomes one playing field. And so there's nothing more important about you than the spotted owl, for example. Or we may begin to think of you, as many of our really radical environmentalists have seen, that you are really the filthy creature on the planet.
Right. There's only 500 million of us to be a healthy planet,
right.
something like that.
And so we have a tendency then to begin to elevate the world around us, which is interesting because that's one of the things that Paul talks about in Romans 1, what happens when we deny the truth of God, that we then begin to worship the created things around us. And to some extent, we're seeing that. It's almost a return to paganism, where we begin to worship the Mother Earth, and she is more important than a human being. In the midst of all of that, our own desires and passions and so forth then become elevated to the point where we then create ourselves as gods. And so that I find that the life in the womb is actually of less value than the life in an eagle egg, because we kill more babies every day than we lost in the towers on 9/11. And yet, if you were to destroy an eagle egg, we'd put you in jail and probably throw the key away. And so what happens is we lose the perspective. And by the way, I think we need to protect eagle eggs. I don't want anybody to say that. But in terms of what happens of the devaluing of life, the devaluing of humanity, and the rise in the worship of the created thing, and so we get it all out of whack.
No, I think so, and I think that's you hit on two issues on life and on the environment, because to put it another point, or I guess the contrasting point is that if you also see that there is no God that has put us as the steward of creation, well, then you can rape the creation and do what you want with it, because then it becomes purely functional. I'm not worried about the next generation. I'm going to do whatever I want. And so you have these swings where you don't have, I think it's Schaeffer did do a good job saying we need to be good stewards of our environment. But I think you're right. I think that you've hit upon something very key, that the environmental view, your view that we're equal to all these things, leads us to a view that is very anti-life. And so these issues of life we deal with abortion and things like that, go back to an evolutionary view of the world. Yeah. Apparently when Marx and Engels were originally, of course they were in England, and in the 1859, apparently Engels, they've been working on the rise of communism, but their struggle was cosmology. Where did we all come from and how did we get here? And Engels apparently came to Marx one day. He just heard of Darwin and read his book. He said, I think we found it. We have found what we need as a theory to explain where we get there. Well, you fast forward that to Lenin. And when they had the great, I guess it was 1921, they had one of the great famines. And I think one of his comments was, well, and all these people are dying, millions of people. He said, well, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Meaning life does not mean anything unless it is being used for me. And so I think that's a very key, is that we can use body parts, baby parts, and sell them, and it becomes, they're functional, it's utilitarian. Yeah. I mean, to sum up here, what you're saying is that basically all these worldviews do go back to Genesis. And it really reminds me actually of this perspective that I think that what we've been dealing with for so long is we're fighting again against this enlightenment. I mean, I quoted, I think, Lenin earlier saying that, you got to break a few eggs, make an omelet. I think that actually goes back to the French Revolution, which in many ways is the outworking of this Enlightenment worldview. It ends in death. The French Revolution is a consistent view of where this goes. Look at Stalin, and I think when Whittaker Chambers, he realized, the great American, he converted to Christianity, he left communism because he realized that Stalin was effectively doing the way communism worked. It ends in death. And I think that a lot of Christians who are embracing of a naturalistic view of history do not realize that they are embracing something whose heartbeat is death. And so as much as they try to whitewash it, it becomes whitewashed tombs. That they cannot wed Christianity to a historical structure based on death.